Well, good evening. This is Houndog Steve coming to you on the 16th of March. And oh boy, what a lot we have to talk about this evening. The Kathleen Wynne Liberal government in Ontario has prorogued for a weekend, and they are going to submit a throne speech on Monday, which will outline their upcoming platform for an election, no doubt. Now, this whole idea of proroguing is an interesting concept. And in the 19th and 20th century, basically proroguing was used as a way to foreshorten government without actually closing government. There was, of course, many wars and skirmishes and that kind of thing going on in the 19th and 20th century. And once an agenda had been filled, or a mandate had been filled, the government would prorogue and allow the constituents to go home to their ridings to attend to personal issues, losses in the family, and so on and so forth. But more recently, with Chrétien, Harper, Dalton McGuinty, and now Kathleen Wynne, proroguing has become a political tool to actually avoid embarrassing questions or embarrassing issues which are about to come up. And I will be showing you evidence of the fact that government is just using this to shut down government, because that's the very convenient thing about proroguing, is that any legislation that was in the works basically gets stalled and everyone has to go back to square one. And so this is obviously, I believe, a tactic by the Wynne government to prepare all of their candidates for the upcoming election. And I think what this tells me is that the Liberals are quite concerned about the fact that Doug Ford got elected as the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. The polls are still very much in favour of a majority Conservative government under his leadership, and the Liberals are absolutely trailing with 22% in the popularity polls, as opposed to 44% for the Conservatives. And I think that Wynne's advisors have told her that there is a populist undercurrent running through the world today. And this is part of the silent majority who are frightened to speak up for fear of rebuke. And I mean, this is kind of an interesting little aspect, it shows you what happens when you start radicalizing points of view. Okay, all of a sudden things go underground, and you find people start discussing things in isolation, and it makes communication even more difficult. Okay, so I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Doug Ford be elected to the Premier of Ontario as a backlash against the political correctness, which I am certainly hearing, certainly through my line of work. The nonsense, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples in a second too, as we go through some of the items that I've seen in the news this week, as to the ludicrous extremes. Peanut butter is now racist. And in a previous video that I did, I mentioned that, colour blindness is actually racist. So to not be racist is to be racist. I mean, we have reached way past embarrassingly cringeworthy and bizarre. Okay, we're also going to have a little chat about cryptocurrencies because, well, they're languishing. And I did a Webbot report recently, and it made some fantastic predictions for March, and we're in March, and for the rest of the summer. And I'm going to be fascinated to see exactly how this plays out. Now, what I have noticed with the Webbot is that the predictions can be accurate, but not quite on time. Okay, it's very difficult to predict timescales when you're using this kind of predictive linguistics, and so I think we may have to give a little leeway here, but certainly all the other indications that I'm seeing One, I'm going to show you signs of manipulation in the market, and of course I'm hearing of that Litecoin is building platforms of its platform, and you know, the interesting thing about that is that to use the platforms that are being built on Litecoin, same as the platforms that are being built on Bitcoin, you will need Bitcoin to transact within. No matter what that platform is in, your base currency of transaction is going to be Bitcoin or Litecoin or Ethereum or whatever it happens to be, Litecoin Cash, Bitcoin Cash, and so on and so forth. But anything that is built on the Bitcoin platform or the Litecoin platform is going to require the use of Litecoin as a coin to get through the door. It's a gateway, an access tool, and that is going to certainly affect the price of Litecoin and Bitcoin tremendously. So we could see, and we have seen, very, very, very fast increases and decreases with both Bitcoin and Litecoin and Ethereum. But I will show you some charts that I think indicate that we've got a little bit of market manipulation going on here. And finally, in the news, I will be talking about the new racist lexicon, which is absolutely bizarre. I mean, you just will not believe what we're looking at now. Okay, so well, let's go over to that, and I'll get back to you in a second. Okay, so prorogation is the end of a parliamentary session in the Parliament of Canada and the Parliament of its provinces and territories. It differs from a recess or adjournment, which do not end a session, and from a complete dissolution of Parliament, which ends both session and the entire Parliament. In the Canadian parliamentary system, the legislature is typically prorogued upon the completion of the agenda set forth in the speech from the throne, and remains in recess until the monarch or governor-general in the federal sphere or lieutenant governor in the province summons parliamentarians. From 2008 to present, prorogation has been the subject of discussion among academics and Canadian public and their political representatives, and of course this is why. And here we have from the Globe and Mail, prorogation, Jean Chrétien did it too. One argument you sometimes hear from Conservatives, though obviously not from Michael Ignatieff or his supporters, is that Jean Chrétien was not criticised for proroguing to avoid having to receive Sheila Fraser's report on the sponsorship scandal. Conservatives also say that many of today's critics actually respected him for his willingness. Some even cheered Mr. Chrétien's toughness in shutting down the Somalia inquiry, which was investigating a far more serious matter than Afghan detainees. Okay, so here we go. Harper to prorogue Parliament until October. Both opposition parties accused Harper of avoiding accountability. People aren't going to be fooled. This is clearly a desperate government worn out by ethical scandals and mismanagement. Stephen Harper refused to answer legitimate questions from the public, NDP leader Tom McKerr said in a statement. Liberal Deputy Leader Ralph Goodall agreed. Stephen Harper and his PMO are under fire for several scandals, from the recent Wallen report into potentially fraudulent expenses to the $90,000 check in the Wright Duffy affair, and are obviously keen to avoid questions and scrutiny by Parliament, said Goodall. It's not the first time Harper has used prorogation, a standard parliamentary tool that has the effect of cancelling any legislation that's still before the House. You see, that's very handy. It's very handy for a government. In December 2008, Harper prorogued rather than face a vote of non-confidence when his Conservatives held a minority government and the Liberals, New Democrats and Bloc Québécois were threatening his grip on power. He prorogued again the following year, halting House of Commons committee hearings into treatment of Afghan detainees and killing a number of pieces of legislation. Prorogation jumped into the headlines again last fall when then Ontario Premier Dalton McGuinty, embroiled in a number of scandals, resigned as Liberal leader and called a halt to a business of the provincial legislature. And of course, here we are. This is the NDP, the Ontario NDP. Today's prorogation stunt by Kathleen Wynne is nothing more than a desperate attempt to wipe the slate clean by a tired Liberal government that's well past its expiry date. The Liberals had 15 years to make life better for Ontarians, and they let people down. People are not buying the last-ditch attempt by Kathleen Wynne to grab their attention and to convince them that this time she'll be different. The fact is, anything she really intended to do, she could have done already. And here we go. This is from CTV. A wonderful picture of Kathleen Wynne there. She really looks like the most friendly person in the world, don't you just think? Okay, Wynne said all government bills and motions that existed prior to prorogation will be reintroduced to the legislature. So as I say, this is just a way of clearing the decks, and you know, again, why is that? You have to ask yourself, why is she doing this? I mean, I know it's a pre-election kind of stunt, but you know, I think that she is seriously concerned about the lineup and the fact that she is so low in the ratings. And of course, you know, I've seen lots of things on Facebook recently about, you know, oh, you got to be really worried about Doug Ford, and that you'll see healthcare cuts and all that kind of thing. And but here we are. You know, this is from 2015. Ontario budget continues hardline on healthcare in bid to tackle deficit. Ontario has been putting the squeeze on healthcare for the past 3 years, but this year the Liberals are moving from a squeeze to a chokehold. They are projecting overall spending growth of just 1.2% on hospitals, doctors and other services, an increase that is less than half the size of last year's and well short of inflation and population growth. So the Liberals have been absolutely guilty of slashing healthcare. Okay, so do not believe what they are telling you about, you know, the Conservatives cutting healthcare. It's already happening, folks, and we need to pay attention and hold. You know, I mean, part of it, I think, is our fault because we just don't hold these people to account. You know, we have a responsibility. You know, it's not just to vote every 4 years, but to actually pay attention and make sure that these people are representing our best interests. And, you know, if we don't do that, well, then this is the kind of nonsense that you can expect. Okay, so let's shift over to cryptocurrencies. And once again, I'm going to point out, now just watch these patterns. Okay, now they're not exact, but they're close enough that you can see that there is a similarity to the ups and downs. Okay, a little dip, up and over and down again. Look at, they're all the same, they're virtually identical. Okay, now this to me spells of collusion. This is manipulation. This is something going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of, because it is just not possible for all these currencies to be behaving in exactly the same fashion on virtually the same time scale. So someone is buying in and buying out of these major currencies. Okay, all the ones that you see. In fact, you know, I mean, I think this is actually telling you that these will be good investments down the road because somebody is trying to manipulate the hell out of them. And the ones that are, look at them all, one after another. I mean, it's unbelievable, this pattern, repetition. And of course, you know, the ones that you see that don't behave like that, you have to be kind of suspicious of, I guess. But yes, I am smelling definitely a huge stinking turd in all of this. And so I would be patient. I would just be hanging on and watching the outcome of all of this. Like I say, Cliff High has been off on his timing before, and I am hoping that this is the case this time too, because, well, if this time schedule that was in the Webbot report gets filled, I will certainly be the first to eat my hat. And our last story is peanut butter and jelly racist. Portland school principal ties sandwich to white privilege. A lunchtime staple of students for years, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich could be considered one of the more popular items found in sack lunches of school children. But in conjunction with recent equity training, you see, this is what I said, equity training in local Portland schools, one principal is raising questions about the mention of the sandwich, arguing it has broader implications about race. The sandwich was reportedly mentioned in a lesson plan last year. Veronice Gouture from the Harvey Scott K-8 school used it as an example of a substitute form of racism in language, according to the report. What about Somali or Hispanic students who might not eat sandwiches, Gouture said, according to the Tribune. Another way we would like to say Americans eat peanut butter and jelly. Do you have had anything like that? Let them tell you, maybe they eat tortilla or pita. What absolute nonsense are we talking about here? Okay, so this is Human Events, the condensed liberal handbook of racial code words by Michelle Mackin, and this is 2012. But here we go down here. Constitution is a racially loaded word. Experienced. And experienced is a dreaded racial code word. How about food stamp president? Oh my God. Golf. Oh, yeah, this one is a golf smacker. You can't use the word golf. Oh my God. It's all Greek to me, but that's probably racist too. Holding down the fort. I know you guys have been holding down the fort. Oops, that was Obama at a Tampa rally in 2008. Kitchen cabinet. Radio talk show host Mark Thompson jumped on Romney for using this phrase, coined to describe Andrew Jackson's administration in the 1800s. At the NAACP convention in July, Romney was referring to a close member of his staff during his tenure as Massachusetts governor. To talk about being in the kitchen and not talk about an African American actually being in your cabinet is really not a good metaphor to be using with African Americans, Thompson blasted. Is it racist to ask, huh? So we really have moved. So here we have the updated handbook of racial code words, your child's school lunch, and the subtle racism of peanut butter. No, really, this has moved beyond the slack-jawed incredulity into total self-parody territory. Oh my God. What is racist about a child's lunch, one might ask? Peanut butter and jelly? Of course, you racists probably even use black currant jelly, sometimes on white bread, God damn it. Please, give me a break. We have been so infantilized, which means turning people into infants. And that's what this is. This is the sort of thing that you would hear out of kindergartners. This is how inane this has become. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little news piece and some of the things that I picked up in my travels, and I hope that you don't have cognitive dissonance after that last piece, because I certainly was feeling a little woozy when I first read that nonsense. And the lengths, you know, because the teachers were getting training, okay, to dissect their white privilege. Well, of course, you're going to see this through a particular lens, and this is the lens. They're lending us an opportunity to see through the lens that they're seeing things through. And I just watched a little piece by Janice Fiamengo, who just went through a human rights tribunal where a student accused her in the University of Ottawa of not accommodating her because she had some learning disabilities. And she reiterates this sort of kangaroo style of court where no evidence was required. It was basically the plaintiff's accusation, and that was accepted as absolute truth. And so these are very tenuous times, and we must pay attention and basically speak out, stand in your own truth and speak out about what you know. Just doesn't make sense. You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be ugly, you just have to calmly point out, as Jordan Peterson does, that this is the way it is. It's not my opinion, this is the facts. And so we're going to leave it there. You take care, you have yourself a great week, actually weekend coming up. I'm hoping to make a couple of videos over the weekend, so we will be talking very, very soon. And please, if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe below, and you take care. See you now. Bye.